If you're ready, let's start. Mariana, are you ready?
Yep. Let's do it.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for a special event about Nucleus Hyperloop Desert Campus. Now, let me check. We are more than 200 participants, design students, professors from different universities and also different countries. And I would like to welcome all of you. Today we are hosting Mariana Cabugueira. She's an architect and urban designer from Portugal, and she's a part of the competition cluster at Zaha Hadid Architects and teaches at AIDRL in London. So let me introduce myself. I'm Ilginay and I am an architecture student from Bilkent University. And I will be moderating this webinar together with our Design and Architecture Society coordinators, Esin, Ece, and Asena. Girls, show yourself.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And before we start, as Bilkent University Design and Architecture Society, we would like to thank Mariana for her collaboration and agreeing to participating in our event. And lastly, Mariana will tell us about her career path, Zaha Hadid Architects, softwares, workflow of project in an office, and then showcasing the Hyperloop campus, the design concept, the design processes, and digital designing modeling of the challenging geometry. And then we will move on with the question and answer session. Then I'm silent now, and I would like to leave the floor to our special guest, Mariana.
Hi, Ilginay. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really like your organization. I really like your board members. Super powerful. I think it was the first thing that caught my attention. So it's really an honor to be part of this group for today. So maybe let's start this. Okay, I'm going to make this full screen. All right, I think we are ready to start. Okay, so introductions were done, but I'm going to repeat like in short paragraphs. So I am Mariana. I am a senior designer architect at Zaha Hadid Architects. I'm also a tutor at the AA, Architectural Association in London. I'm a tutor of Maya, which is a software. And I'm also a tutor, a live tutor on webinars and workshops with people around the world. I am Portuguese. I graduated in Lisbon and I graduated also in Milano and I post-graduated in London. So today and traditionally, I would like to explain, especially because I'm talking to students, I would like to explain a little bit how my academic years were and how did I transition from being an architect in a graduated architect in Lisbon to a postgrad in London, and how this brought me to Zaha, and what kind of softwares I encountered, and especially what is the workflow in big offices, more specifically in Zaha. And this was the same workflow that I took to a project, which is the Hyperloop project, a project I did with Beijing and Juan. It's a competition project, so I also want to explain a bit about this project. And then I want to show you what I do, what I teach, what kind of software is this. I think it's very important to expose this software, especially if we are so many today. And what I do in parallel, which I have it on the side, because it's probably one of the most important parts. Okay, so I'm going to start. I was a student at 3 different schools. I had a very long academic years. And by the way, sit back, relax. We're gonna be here for a bit, okay, for at least 1 hour. So a bit chilled. So I studied in 3 schools. I did a very long academic path. I did more or less 8 years of academic. This is not a recipe. It doesn't mean that I recommend. I actually don't recommend, but because of some circumstances, it took me 8 years to finish. So I studied in Lisbon. This is where I did my graduation. I did Erasmus and I did it in Milano. And then I did a post-graduation in London. Okay, so back to my student life. So I was a little bit of a different student. Only very later on, I understood why I was different. It apparently I was more of an architectural designer than the conventional architect that you have in my country. I was sort of plastic, not too plastic, but plastic. I was very experimentalist. I had a very wild approach to my projects and very genuine. I never wanted to be different, quite the opposite. I never understood why I was a little bit my projects look different, which is the worst part, right? They look different. And I never really understood if this was a good thing or a bad thing. Now that we hear the story, we are kind of, that was a good thing. But back then, you never think it's a good thing. You think that you're just average and weird. So I took on my architectural graduation very seriously with a lot of commitment and a lot of work. I did my final master's, which took me 3 years to end. It was my final project. It was a very different project from my colleagues. It was a project that I struggled to explain, but I felt it so deeply. And I understood so deeply what I wanted, the message that I wanted to pass, but it was so hard for me to really make it understood. I was in a country that was very modernist, very into Corbusier and all of these, the modernism epoch, which is like the 50s and the 60s. And most of our schools are still very much stuck in this. And for some reason, I really never understood that. I really felt that the city has the responsibility of representing contemporaneity. For me, this was very clear. And we were preserving museums, we were preserving the city center as museums, we were preserving old architecture as treasures. And I never understood this. So it was a very long project for me. It was 3 years of project. So when I finished, I was really, like most of you are right now, I was really not sad, but I was very down about my possibilities in my country. So I understood that I was an architectural designer. I didn't know that I was an architectural designer, but I understood that I was design driven, and my country could not afford to put in design, and most of the offices that we know cannot afford to do design, or they're not interested to do design. They just want to do these 90 degrees kind of projects without any feel of the context, just like a little box on the street. And I was really not like that. So my panorama when I finished graduating was unpaid internship, small offices, small projects, and boxes. Okay, as I know I'm just cutting this too short, but this is what probably you see as well. This is what I saw. And I knew that I cannot do this. I cannot cut my creativity for now. These are the times that I'm the most creative right now. Not as I grow older. I don't want to lose this now. So I decided I have to move countries. I have to look for something else. I need to gain design experience. I need to know the tools to create design. So that means that I need to look for another school. And I was 26. So it was very scary because I was internally, I never shared this with anyone back then, but I remember thinking, if I'm going to join another master and I'm at 26, I will finish graduating, post-graduating at 28. And this was very scary, very scary. But it was very clear. I was a designer, I was in the wrong country. So I searched for schools really quickly. I decided I'm not going to do an internship in my country. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck here for a year. I decided I'm not going to do internship. I'm going to look for something else. So I started looking for postgrads. I was even looking at PhDs. I was blind. I was just searching something that would make sense to my skills and to what I'm good at. And I found the AA, which is the Architectural Association in London. I read that a couple of students and very good architects were students there, like Zaha was a student there, Rem Koolhaas was there, Cedric Price, Eva Gilberg, Peter Cook, Shumi, Stephen All, they all went through the AA. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna look for the AA. I'm gonna see like what's happening there. They had an open day. It was actually on my birthday back then, and it was an open day, and I decided I'm going to travel to London and I'm going to go to the open day and see what kind of school this is. To my luck, on the same day of the open day, there was this very big final presentation going on in an auditorium. A lot, exactly what you're seeing like now. So it was a lot of fuss, a lot of people, a lot of boards. digital design that was completely out of my depth. Like I was not even close to those. And I decided I'm going to follow these people in this auditorium and I'm going to listen to this. So when I walked in, I saw Patrick Schumacher was there. Zaha was not there, but she's usually the jury there. She was. And Patrick was there. And I knew Patrick because of the things that he was writing about parametric architecture back then. And when I saw him, I had the feeling that this is going to be interesting. This is the closest that I've been to someone and to a group of people who believe in the same things that I believe. And then when they started presenting, it was very clear that everything they were saying was exactly what I was saying back then in my country, in Lisbon, that cities have a DNA, there is a parameter in cities, a parameter in design, there is something more deep in architecture, deeper in architecture than just aesthetic old architecture. Than preserving old architecture and to make it museums, there's a lot more in there. We can pass the DNA in a city to contemporary buildings without losing anything. So this was the base for me for parametric architecture, and I understood, okay, this is so obvious. This is exactly where I need to be. Little did I know that 2 years later, I would be presenting in that same auditorium with all of these boards in front of all of these people, okay, on the same day, but 2 years later. So I applied to the DRL. They usually accept per year 300 people, and they choose 30 or 40, okay? So 300 apply and 30 or 40 kind of, again, chosen. And I was very scared because I didn't have much design skills. I didn't have any tools. I didn't model in 3D. I just modeled by hand, a lot of physical models. So I was very concerned about not getting in, but I put all my effort in it and I really gave it all. And I was calling the school every week and I actually got in. So that was the first step of leaving my country and kind of doing something that was me. That was closer to who I am in architecture. So the DRL, very quickly for the students who might be interested, has 3 different studios. You have Theodore Spiropoulos studio, you have Sajay and Alicia Norman studio, and you have Patrick Schumacher studio. Okay, they are different because you have Theodore is usually more prototype and assembly kind of projects, very technological. Sajay is usually very based into robotic fabrication and geometry for robotic fabrication. And then Patrick Schumacher studio is very much into design, and it is a little bit closer to what we do at the Zaha office. So the workflow is similar, but most important, the softwares are similar. Okay, I didn't know that anyway. I was there for Patrick Schumacher studio only. First 6 months, you have mandatory classes for softwares. So it's like 6 months of only workshops and software. We learned all of the softwares that you're looking at. It was insane. It was really mind-blowing, the amount of software that you had to know. We had to know processing, we had to know how to code, we had to know how to free model, we had to know how to do Grasshopper, and we had very good tutors. At this point, right now, I am one of the tutors, but back then we had very good tutors. And one of the most important softwares that we learned was Maya for me, because as soon as I applied to Patrick's studio, and I got Patrick's studio, I started working with Juan Carlos from Bogota, Nicolas Tornero from Chile, and we did 1 full year at Patrick Schumacher's studio. Okay, and in this course, I did a lot of Maya. Back then, I was not very good at Maya, but then I had to learn it like crazy and model all of this with the free modeling software, which is called Maya. It was a whole year. Our final project was a cluster of towers with an exoskeleton, which means that all your forces are pushed to the boundary of your tower. So all of your structure is outside of the tower, which is, it kind of frees the interior and you are allowed to create these voids that can go from top to bottom. So it was pretty interesting. We also did a lot of work on topology optimization. And then in the end, this was more or less like it. Of course, this is a student project. I would never in a million years put this tower in London, these cluster of towers in London, but it was super exciting and it had a lot of theory as well. And one of the most challenging parts is always to work with in teams. I think it's really one of the most important parts in universities to know how to work in teams, and this prepares you a lot for professional years. So as I was finishing and presenting the project, something else came up. The same problem that I had when I was living in Lisbon, which is, what do I do next? Now I have to work, and now I think I feel like I can work as a designer, but where? Obviously, plan A for me was Zaha. Zaha for me, it is the first woman name, I would say, the biggest woman name that we know in architecture. It represents us a lot, 100%. I never had an idol, and Zaha was the closest that I had to that. She really went against all odds and became one of the biggest names in architecture. Not just her, but also her projects became one of the most important architecture nowadays. So it was pretty clear I was working with Patrick. I thought, okay, it's now. I have to apply. I have to give my everything. I did my portfolio, spoke with Patrick. Patrick recommended me to the office. And then I met with the head of the competition cluster, which is Paulo Flores and Melody. And I met with them. I met with another director. And it was, I was very nervous, obviously, for this interview, but kind of playing it cool with all the tricks for you that you need to know when you go to an interview, like breathing and, talking slowly. And it went super well. And I actually joined this cluster. This is the cluster where I've been working for the past 4 years, and it is the competition cluster. So when we say cluster, is basically like a department, because as you can imagine, offices that are very big, very corporate, they need to be, they tend to be split in departments. So we have cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, and we have the Zaha cluster, which is the one that I belong to, which is mostly dedicated to competitions and to some commissions. But the most important part about this cluster is it is responsible for the high-end design of the projects that come from Zaha Hadid architects. Okay, this means that the fanciest, the most exquisite project that you see, let's say online, there is a very big chance that came from my cluster, where the designers are. Okay, so right now I am an architectural designer. I am responsible to give ideas to my cluster, to take a brief, to do a million options based on the brief, and then to carry on with this option forward to submit a competition. Okay, most important part about the practice inside of my cluster is the software that we do. It is absolutely fundamental. And it's not Rhino, it's not Grasshopper, it is Maya. It's not 3DS at all, it is Maya, okay? The software that is used for companies like Zaha, UN Studio, MAD is Maya. It is a software that was used in the beginning by Pixar and by DreamWorks, and it is used for animations. But 30 or 40 years ago, Zaha brought the software to the architectural practice. And now all of the buildings that you see are actually done with this very specific software. It looks like a difficult software. It definitely is not a difficult software, especially if I teach you the software. Okay, what are the principles inside of the software? Why is this different from Rhino? Um, First and very important part, it's not based on pure geometry and on transformations of pure geometry of Booleans or whatever these short transformations that you can do in Rhino. It's based on objects, face, edges, and vertices. So you manipulate faces, edges, and vertices in Maya. The most important feature about Maya is the smooth mesh preview. The real mesh in Maya is a rectangular, ugly mesh. And then if you press number 3, which is just the keyboard, your keyboard is number 3, you apply an algorithm called Catmull-Clark algorithm. And this algorithm, if you want, you can read a little bit more about it. It adds in the preview the subdivisions that are necessary to achieve a curvature between one point and the other point. Okay, so it starts from a normal polygon primitive, just like Rhino, and then you can just like manipulate edges, manipulate vertices. There are no big transformations on this. This is the candle holder from Zaha. and with the Catmull-Clark subdivision, it applies these curves that we all like. So the principle is very simple. This is one of the first projects that you can clearly see Maya in its pure form. Okay, so simple, from a box, from introducing edge loops. Number 3, which applies the Catmull-Clark algorithm, and you have the project. Okay, and this is something that Zaha learned and taught in her office, how to tame and how to control. Okay, and then you can even turn this into an airport, for example. This was an exercise I did in one of my classes. So it becomes very easy to see this software in all projects of Zaha, or the most outstanding projects of Zaha, I would say, but I'm a bit biased. Most of the candle holders most of the towers became candle holders, and that's another good thing about the software. It allows you to change scale without having to be too precise. So you can have the skylight in the Serpentine Gallery, or the same skylight could be used, the same topology can be used for the airport in Beijing, or the Baku huge roof that we have. It can be also used as a bench. So it's the same technique in Maya, the same model, just very quick transformations for function. And then a master plan in Russia, in Moscow, can be turned into a tea or a coffee set. I think it's really outstanding to see the difference in scale in these models, and also very entertaining. The Al Jada master plan can be just a little texture on the wall or a candle holder. The same Al Jada project that I also worked on can be the the Rocca ceiling, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now I want to show you how do we apply Maya in a project workflow. What is a project workflow in big companies? I'm going to showcase the Hyperloop campus, which is also a competition. Okay, so right now I'm just going to explain what's the workflow in a competition. I'm going to speak about Hyperloop campus, which is not a project from the office. It's a project I did with Begum and Juan last summer. And the same process that we did is exactly the same process that I do in the office. Okay, so make the parallel of office and competition with your friends or your school project. Okay, so the Hyperloop. The Hyperloop was fully modeled in Maya, okay, as well. Completely modeled in Maya, as you can see. So it was a competition done by young architects last year, 2020. Part of the judge was Sana, UN Studio, MVRDB, and Arup. I worked with Juan Carlos, with whom I work on the RL, and with Begum. She's the she's the founder of Pada Labs, and she's also from Istanbul. We are very close friends. And we decided to work together as 3 from home, of course. I was in London, she was in Istanbul, and Juan was in Bogota. And we were meeting weekly and kind of splitting the work according to our skills. So obviously I was responsible for the design of the project. So how do you take on the project? How do you take on a competition, either with friends or your school or in an office? Usually we get a brief. The brief is distributed by everyone. Let's say that if I'm in an office, we are 5 designers, and depending on the size of the project, but let's say 5 planners, and these 5 planners are from another cluster, and they are doing 2D. Okay, they are doing plans, they are doing section, and they are doing Rhino. The other 5, which is us, we are designing possibilities, we are also reading brief, we are going according to the plans and giving our design to it. So let's say first step, we get the brief and we get the site. I usually take the keywords from the brief and from the site. In this case, it was iconic building. It's really important. I usually think that the clients or your teachers are saying everything in the brief. They are saying exactly what they have in mind. They are just not drawing, but they are telling you exactly what they have in mind. In this case, they said iconic building, which means it's a landmark. Study center and campus, important, it's part of the program. Science and progress, but at the same time, it's in the VAD, so you kind of have to put a bit of culture and a bit of earth into something that is supposed to be science and progress and technological. Okay, and we need to find like an harmonious blend of these two. A couple of other things like reddish rocks. It kind of gives me some keywords about color, about texture, desert, because this is in Nevada, and the Grand Canyon. also in Nevada, it gives me a little bit of a geometry and spatiality, and I can almost see what they mean. It doesn't mean that you have to do what the brief is telling you to do. You can do some of the keywords, but you don't have to do exactly what you think that the client is thinking. Okay, right? We also want to challenge them. So we take a brief, we take a site, and then we take the program. So for the Hyperloop, the program was divided in 3 different units. Okay, we had the unit 1, which was the most public unit. The most important part was a museum, and there was this big arena, which is like a big auditorium for presentations. Unit 2, which was slightly more private, it had apartments, it had laboratories with the prototype of the Hyperloop, right? So a portion of the Hyperloop was there. They were working on this. And there was a gym and there was a pool, there were offices. So it was more like public and private. And then unit 3, which was absolutely also private, which is classrooms and laboratories. So this is what the program gave us. Okay, step 2, either in an office or competition or your student project. After you take the brief and the program, you start getting images from your keywords of what you want and what they wanted. So in this case, they said desert, and in some way there is something geometry-wise very interesting on sand dunes. So I save more like a mood board, right? I save on my library, references library, sand dunes. I understand that they want to bring a little bit of sustainability and they want to bring something new to the desert. So I thought, why not an oasis? Okay, which is a circle surrounded by green and water. So this was also a very important element. And then also you should include a bit of research on case studies. Case studies are super important. So it's not just keywords on these beautiful illustrations. You have to see case studies. So if they said campus, I'm going to look for campus that have been already built. How do they plan it? What are the sizes? What is the circulation? So in this case, I thought we thought very simple oasis circular configuration, campus with a circular configuration, and we found the Google campus, a lot of other campus that had these courtyards included. Okay, and then a little bit of highway because of the loop, since this was the Hyperloop, and then the reddish tones that they mentioned, we kind of dropped this idea, but it's good to have it on your mood board. And then we go to step 3. So the team joins, we share our references, we debate our references either in office or with our colleagues. We debate our references and we decide what were the strongest references that we can take on our design. So step 3. And on step 3, we have 2 teams, okay? We have the 2D and the planning team, which is doing Rhino on the right. And we have the design team, which is taking the Rhino and the massing and designing it. Okay, so in this case, I was doing the design, or the massing design. Okay, first approach, it was my favorite sketch, and I think it still is. And it was very simple. So we have 3 units, we have 3 oases, and we have a public tour that loops around all of these units. So this gives us a tripod. So I designed a tripod that was looping exactly like the Hyperloop, and it had these courtyards as the main moments where everything was happening around them, and then around this kind of boomerang shape. The team met and they decided this is not really like a campus. It doesn't look like a campus. It's looking a little bit more like a landmark. So it's a little bit alien to the site. And maybe we can make this even a little bit bigger, and it's not breathing well. It's too dense, it's too concentrical. So let's make this breathe a little bit. So that took us to another step, which was the final step for program, which were instead of having 3 units, we're going to have 4 units. We're going to take this arena as a separate unit. We're going to loop around these 4 units. We're going to keep the same idea of having oases and of having courtyards. And in the center of these units, we're going to have the Hyperloop prototype. So everything goes around this Hyperloop prototype. Okay, so this was our final idea of how to distribute the program. So then again, I started the design from scratch, and I took on another references, which was the clover leaf highway. And I was really obsessed with the clover leaf highway because it was exactly what we were exploring: 4 courtyards, a looping public tour around it, and then something very important in the center. And I literally modeled this in Maya. I started with 2 courtyards. The best thing about this distribution is the project is completely symmetric, which is very useful when you're modeling and when you're doing planning. So I started doing 1 axis of symmetry and then 4 axes of symmetry, and extruding all of this in 3D. And this was the final shape for the Hyperloop. Obviously added a little bit of detail here and there, and it basically everything came together in this shape. So basically this step, I froze the design. It was very simple. It was gathering exactly the same ideas. There is a public tour that is going around 4 units, and the prototype is in the center. Design was frozen. Accessibility was very clean, since this was a loop, right? You can enter and exit on the 4 main axes and on the 4 main ends. Okay, and then as the design is frozen, you get this model, you give this model to everyone who's doing Rhino and plans, and then we start with the 2D work and with the plan and with interiors as well. So the other team was, the other members of the team were doing the plans, they were doing the programmatic distribution, they were doing all the spaces from the moment you enter, which is here, to a little museum, the temporary museum, and then 2 offices, and then looping up, and then here in the center, our Hyperloop prototype would be here exactly, and then the apartments there, and then restaurant on one corner. So this was the work that was going on in parallel, and me, I was still in Maya, and I was defining something that is really important in office or in your school, which is what are the key moments, the most important shots that I'm going to see, because you cannot solve the whole project, right? You need to get the most important shots. Some of our clients call it the selfie spots, right? They want everyone to take a selfie there. So I call them the money shots. So what are the money shots of my project? And I need to work according to these money shots. I'm going to add detail according to these money shots. So I was defining the exteriors, I was adding some louvers, and I was defining the interiors as well. Okay, in parallel, Begum was doing research for something really important for this project, which was sustainability. She was really looking into this concept of resilience in the loop, which made this argument that the loop can actually be self-sufficient. It is independent from its context. It works as a system on its own. We incorporated solar panels on the landscape around, which was working really nicely with the design as well. That's really important. And we were able to pass the rainwater in this loop that is kind of descending also in height. So it was helping renovating the rainwater from the courtyards also out to the desert. That was really important. And then another important feature for resilient project, it is absolutely flexible function-wise. So any function would work in a loop, as long as it's an hybrid function, of course. Okay, final step. As the plans are done, the design is done, we start the final step, which is the production, the final production step. This is where you get your renders, your diagrams. Usually in an office, you outsource some renders, and you have some renders that you do in-house. So most of us know how to render. We have to know how to render. I do V-Ray in Maya, and I do a lot of keyshot. And I do V-Ray in Rhino as well, but I prefer V-Ray in Maya. And I do a lot of keyshots. So on your left, you have a keyshot. And in this project, we also outsourced our renders to Metrica Visuals in Bogota, and they were doing V-Ray inside of 3ds Max. Okay, so we set the final views, the final exterior views and the final interior views, and also very important, the mood board. And you start this, let's say we leave 3 weeks for production, okay, 3 weeks usually. And you start this back and forth conversation with the render company. according to your mood boards, according to little details that they were missing. 3 weeks is enough. And these were the final renders that Metrica Visuals did for us. I was really excited about it because it was usually when you see it in Maya, it's pretty, but it's not this, right? So it's a very special moment when you see some magic going with your projects. And this was definitely our money shot. And we defined this as the money shot from the very beginning. We said, this is the money shot. And it actually became the money shot, and it's the shot that I'm the most proud about. These were the interiors. So as you can see here on the right, this is the Hyperloop prototype. I actually modeled this. I even modeled the seats. So it's just a portion of the tube, of the Hyperloop tube, where the workers and the employees and the scientists are working on the actual prototype, right? And everyone can see it. So this is the museum going around and the public tour going around. So you have visibility throughout the whole loop. And this on the left is the entrance, doing exactly what the brief said, mixing a little bit of earth tones and a bit of nature with progress and science. And then on the side, I was having a little bit of fun with Keyshot and a little bit more basic kind of renders, not so realist, but I think that they also feel this your final booklet as well, and everyone enjoys them, even though they are not so realistic. So this is just Keyshot, metal material, and a lot of post-production on Photoshop just for the greens. And then there's also the planning team that is doing the plans and the sections. And I was rendering the sections from Keyshot as well. These were the final plans. And one of the most important parts that I think everyone skips when they are doing a project is an icon. I think all the projects should have an icon. An icon is what makes your project and understood without having to see the project. So I understand exactly what your project is about just by looking at your icon. It also makes your project very memorable because you can use this little icon everywhere and they know exactly which project they are looking at. So we also developed the icon for the Hyperloop. It could be a very simple 2D made in Illustrator, or it could be a keyshot render, for example. This was a keyshot render. You know, it's also an icon, but it doesn't work like exactly like this, right? They don't have the same purpose. And then the final of the final steps in the competition or in your project at school is the final board. So for this competition, we could only have one big A0. So this was our A0. And then on the side, you submit booklet with all the submission elements like the plans and the sections and all the theory behind. So if I was in an office, I would spend 3 months or 4 months on a competition. If this was a competition project, it's usually 4 months for a competition. And as you finish a competition, you get 1 day, you reset, and then on the day after, you start a new competition, and everything starts from the beginning. Okay. Now, not about the Hyperloop, but about what Maya does and what do I do with Maya. So when I started doing Maya, I was actually very bad at Maya. I was doing it on the DRL, and I had not a very good tutor. Actually, he sucked. A very bad tutor. And that makes you, it really doesn't help you learning. Quite the opposite. You get some kind of frustration and trauma about this software, right? So I kind of was not good at it. I even spoke with my mother many times. I think she's actually here today. Hi, Mom. I spoke with my mother many times and I was really frustrated about the software because I knew that this was going to be the software that would get me in Zaha and that would help me at Zaha. So after I realized I was not really good, I decided that I'm going to push for the software to the real limit. And when I joined the office, I could really tell that I was really under everyone around me, especially in Maya and my skills in Maya. So I kind of pushed for this as much as I could. I was working on the weekends. I was working after hours. I was pulling for everything I could with the software. I got invited to teach Maya at the AADRL. And 3 years later, this is the work that I have been doing outside of the office. So it's a lot of work. obviously none of this is office work. This is just the work that I do on my weekends and after work to teach. So last 4 years I have been teaching for DRL Maya, and I really thought that they deserve a better tutor. Uh, I know it sounds like it's just a software, but it's really an important one. So I really asked to be a teacher some time ago, and I stayed as a teacher for the last 4 years with DRL. This was last year. Uh, it was happy times when we could have these classes live with each other, and these were their final projects. It was very Maya, as you can see, really cool results, really good quality. And then, of course, on the side, I also decided I don't think that this should be a knowledge that belongs only to DRL or to a private institution. I think that this should come like internationally, and I should really bring my knowledge to another level. And I decided, okay, let's teach live and let's start doing these workshops, these live workshops. And it has been like quite an intense experience. So my last class, there were over 180 students from more than 50 countries. And it's usually a weekend, a super intense weekend, 8 hours, Saturday and Sunday of me talking and talking and modeling, and they practice with a recording afterwards. It's really intense. So this was done with Futurely. It's for beginners. It doesn't seem like beginners, but this is so simple. It was one of the fastest projects. Oh, this was also for Future Lead, something that you can model in 1 hour. In Maya, this is not 1 hour, this is more like 4 hours, but still the process is quite simple, and it looks so complex and aesthetically so pleasing. This was my last workshop with Futurely. I had like amazing students. Their results are showing right now, and I feel really proud when I see that they actually did even better than me. It is amazing when you see that you pass the knowledge so well that the students can actually take another step. And these were some of the interiors of the starship of this model that I created. And then I also gave some classes for Live Academy, some of my projects. This is also original ones. These were the first ones that I did actually when I decided I'm going to model outside of the office on the weekends. I actually did overnights for this project just for fun. Back then it was just for fun. And then these towers, this class of tower was also taught. And then this year, I hope to actually compile a final platform for Maya teaching. I think that everyone deserves this. You shouldn't have to join DRL to get a good tutor for Maya. So I believe I can be the platform tutor of Maya from beginners to advanced class. This is the software that I do every day, all day, from Monday to Sunday. And I think that it's more than fair to have this out there and ready for you to learn. This year, I'm also going to start and get back into this project, which was a project that we won at the office. It was the Tower C for Shenzhen. It was a competition project that we did last year, last summer. It was a very long project because for me, I started from zero. So for me, this site was empty, and I had to give 1,000 of ideas for this project. It was Twin Tower for Shenzhen, um, mostly office. It has also a hotel, and it has a huge podium, public podium for shopping mall and retail. And I started this project from the very zero, and I had a super cool team. I was working with other 3 designers, and they were doing super cool towers as well. And then in the end, we kind of froze on this design, and we were so happy with it. So the basic concept is very simple, right? It's two twin towers, super elegant, super thin. And the only 2 very important features is the bridge, right? They are holding each other, they are bracing each other. And this is where the hotel is. When we were doing the competition, of course. And then there is this huge podium, green podium, which is something I'm so happy that we are embracing at the office. This green podium, super public, super dynamic, and it's basically bringing this huge central park that they have up the tower and making this green travel the tower from bottom up. So the highest point is 200 meters. And yeah, it was a very, very cool competition. And then we spent 4 months to finish from 0, 0, 0 to all of this level of detail. And then also a friend of mine joined this project, and we had a lot of fun, and then also a huge headache because it's not an easy one. And then this year, I'm going to spend a whole year taking on this project. We won. I'm going to take it to SD, so for completion and for final drawings and rationalization of the geometry also is going to be super exciting. Also, most likely this year, an airport for Sydney that I also was part of is going to be finished. It's in Sydney. I'm showcasing this project because it's not your typical Zaha project that everyone says what's Zaha, what's not Zaha. So it's not the typical one. It's really a project where I learned my lesson. So I was doing a lot of options for this airport, very fluid, very Zaha-like, and I was always getting a no. No, no, it's too fluid, it's too plastic, it's too this and to that. And the reality is the option that went forward is actually an option that is so humble, and it does keep some curves and it does keep some fluidity in the space, but it is humble, it is grounded, it is very related to the culture in Sydney. So it's all in timber, and it has very simple lines, and especially has a lot of light. So this was a big lesson for me. It was simplicity goes a long way, even at Zaha. So I'm happy to see this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I worked on this space quite a lot. It is the baggage claim. And then another project that is starting this year, I was also part of this team. We won last year as well, was the extension of the Expo in Beijing. So I joined this very late in the late studies. I was responsible for these little teeth that you see there. So it's the hotel on one side, and then the other side is the convention center, and then there's a canopy. So this was this little thing that I did on the competition, but it was quite nice because it made the entrance. So I was kind of satisfied. And again, I worked with a lot of friends for this project, so it gives me some very, very positive vibes when I look at it, and it's so simple, right? Because it got through a lot of rationalization process, especially obviously you need to adjust to the budget as well. So in the end, I think it still looks gorgeous. And then in parallel, there is something else to us. We are not just designers, we are not just employees to some company, we are also ourselves. We still have our ideas, we still have our creativity. As you can imagine, my ideas don't always go forward in an office. It's normal, we are a lot of designers, and I'm still young, I think. So I'm still able to get my ideas, to move them forward, and to do whatever I want on the side. So there's something, a big lesson I learned this year, which is you should multitask. You shouldn't have only one income source, for example. You shouldn't be working only for one office. Even if contractually you have to work for only one office, make sure that you have a hobby, or make sure that you have something on the side that you can do, where you can just breathe in your creativity, just sweat it out. And it's something that I did a lot this year. And then another important thing that I do is traveling. Traveling for me is something really important. I started traveling alone for some time. I really recommend everyone to travel alone. I think that you get to see, because you're a bit bored with yourself, you see beauty in another way. So as soon as we can travel again, I think everyone should get back to traveling. So one of the things that I did last year that I'm the most proud about is this chess set. So I was on vacations, but we were working from home, so it's not a typical vacation. Then I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw this chess set that was really not special at all, but it had like a fuss around it, and I thought, I think I can really do better than this, and I have time, so I'm going to spend some time doing something fun. And I did the whole chess set, always in Maya, of course, and it was a lot of fun. You got like a super exciting reaction from everyone. I might be able to actually get this fabricated. Hope so. The good thing is I was approached by some people to actually do some VR chess games on Twitch. So they will do some chess games with one of the most important streamers of chess, and they were um, use my pieces. We have been meeting every week for this. That's going to be very exciting. And one day maybe I can actually get this in a box and sell them. So as I was saying, outside of this, I am also girl, woman, vain. I like photos. I like beauty. I like taking care of myself. I like fashion. I like everything that most of girls like. And I think that we need to keep this alive, and we cannot succumb to whatever society says that success looks like. Okay, you look like whatever you want. So I keep this very much alive. Every time I travel, I take a lot of photographs. I I ask my boyfriend to take a lot of photographs, like all of us. I like to edit them. I like to spend some time on it. It's something that gives me a lot of pleasure, and I hope to keep this alive forever. Um, so in the end, I think that we all need to find this very important balance, right, of being an architect, of being intellectually stimulated and stimulating, and of keeping ourselves and our core alive and vivid, even if we learn that they seem like superficial. They are not superficial. They are you. They are important. So this is exactly what I've been doing right now. I am juggling these two worlds with a lot of pleasure, and that is it.
Thank you so much, Mariana, especially for this very sincere, inspiring, and definitely sharing your knowledge. And also through being a really successful designer.
Thank you.
And it was quite inspiring, let me say. So if it is okay for you, maybe we can move on the Q&A session.
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So if you have questions, you can use the raise hand button that is on the participant list. Also, if you want us to ask your question, you can write on chat and then we can ask it for you. And then we can directly start. Right now, Mirai has a question.
First of all, thank you for this comprehensive presentation. I was wondering that do you have any problems or difficulties when you transfer your ideas to softwares in your mind, or do you make sketches? Because when I make something in my mind, I really have difficulties, especially in organic forms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially in organic farms, I know. So there's not a recipe. Usually, when I teach the software, I like to put it on bullet points so it's cleaner. So I'm gonna put it in bullet points again. There are, let's say, three ways to start the project. I would say one from your sketch, and when I mean from your sketch, I don't mean like an elaborate illustration of your sketch. I mean very basic things like I don't know, super simple things like these kind of sketches. So they are not illustrations. You're not doing a render it's not for anyone to see. So there is one first way, which is your own sketch, your freehand sketch. Or this one maybe I did for my last class. So the Starship, I just get on the main ideas that I have, and then I jump into my 3D software, in this case Maya, and I start modeling exactly like my sketch. So that's one way. Another way, it is getting some illustration or some image that you're really into that makes a lot of sense for your brief from Pinterest, from whatever, a little detail like a glass or whatever, something that makes you like fosters your creativity. It makes sense for your brief. So you take that and you model something that it is interesting on that, a little detail, and then you create the project. And then there is probably like a third way, which is just, opening a software and then getting on with it. Just you just go without any sketch, without anything. I know some of my colleagues that actually do it, and it's impressive. They just put on a cube and then things happen. They just they get carried on, and they are still super super good designers. So there's not a recipe. Some people do the first sketches. They can be super simple. Some people take some case studies and some ideas from some other project, and then some people just start from a blank on the software.
Thank you. And I have one little question more. Since most of your designs are organic farms, do you encounter any constructional problems during the construction process? And if you have, what kind of solutions do you have?
So I know that when we are in school, we have to think as engineers and as architects and as designers and as electricians and as landscape designers, we have to think like all of this. But when you actually join an office, you have something really good which on teamwork, which is consultants. So you have consultants for engineering, you have consultants from landscape designers, you have consultants for lighting. You work in a very, very big team. Which is not part of the office. So usually the office picks on a consultant. Let's say Arup is a very good engineering consultant and company, picks on a company and they assign, let's say, 3 engineers for your project. And then weekly you have meetings with them. And there is this from the very beginning of the project. And then there is this feedback loop between designers, planners, and engineers. Okay, so I would probably show them the very first sketch if they are young or fresh or exciting. They would tell you, okay, I have 1,000 of structures that can work, or maybe you still have to tweak a little bit your curve, or you still have to be a little bit careful about this cantilever because you cannot have this floating for 50 meters, but with this special structural system it might work. Okay, and then your form gets a bit adapted to the structural system that they have. That's why it's so important to work with open-minded structural engineers that get excited instead of feeling that everything is a challenge and is a no, you know. There's nothing worse than a consultant that the first reaction is, oh, no, 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 this is the worst kind. Right? You want the excitement, oh, that's so challenging, that's so different, but I think I can make it work. So now you have to work as everything and as engineers and as everything, but in the future you'll work with a team.
Thank you for your answers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And Doa has a question right now. Doa, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, thank you so much for your comprehensive and inspiring presentation and your sincere messages. I would like to ask that, as you told also, Nucleus was designed for a highly isolated area. What were the compelling aspects of working on such land? And where did you get your references while placing the building in this isolated area?
No. So the brief placed the building where they wanted. So they stated it's in Nevada. But I am guessing that after we did our research, especially on Hyperloop, Begum did a lot of research on the Hyperloop itself. There was one very specific characteristic on the Hyperloop that no one speaks about, but it became very clear why it's in Nevada. So the Hyperloop, when it's running, makes exactly the same noise, and it's running on top of the earth, right? It's on earth, on ground. It makes exactly the same noise as an airplane in the air. So it's a lot of noise. I don't know how they will fix this. I'm also very skeptical about the Hyperloop itself. I did the campus, which was exciting, and maybe it will not be for the Hyperloop, but the Hyperloop was in Nevada because it was acoustically super isolated from any area with residents. So it made sense to have it in Nevada. Obviously, the challenging is how do you bring water there, electricity there, but I'm guessing that they will provide that for the brief. That's the American embassy plan.
Thank you so much.
Siddharthan has a question. I'm not sure if I am pronouncing your name correct. I'm sorry if
Hi,
I
Sid.
did wrong.
Yeah. Hi, Mariana. How's it going?
Hello.
Firstly, I thank Bileknet University, if I'm spelling that right, for making this very public. I never got to see your presentations, and I have finally got to, see this everything, because this teaching and this presentation has, given me 2 different perspectives. So actually, my question is not going to be very long, so I'm just going to keep it very short. Have you ever tried to, ever inspire concepts by art or by imagination? I mean, you spoke a lot about case studies and researches. So it's something, it was very curious kind of a question for me to, if you ever thought about art in your design.
Mm-hmm. Mm, it's a hard one. I may break your heart.
It's
But
okay.
I don't really like when we mix architecture with art. I think we are all very free to have our interpretation and understanding of architecture. I think it's a very dangerous boundary between architecture and art. And it shouldn't be an artistic expression. It does get a little bit artistic if you think about Frank Gehry and some other architects that let's say 80%, 60% of their surfaces, architectural surfaces, are there just for an artistic expression. I wouldn't say that this is the architecture that I think it should be. I think it's art. And I'm not sure if we need buildings that are artistic, because artistic is subject to subjectivity, to, I mean, to whomever is looking at. So it's also subjected to taste, and that's not what architecture is about, right? We need to find some functionality and some beauty in the functionality and not the other way around. So that's why I would most likely, I can take on a painting and transform it in architecture. It wouldn't be my first source to create architecture. That's why I look at architecture to create architecture. You know
But
what I
isn't,
mean?
yeah, but yeah, I mean, you did say that, right? Like, we can't all be very imaginative, but isn't art multidisciplinary in every ways? Because you don't have to necessarily relate art with anything. I mean, there is a lot of debate on how you can combine art and science to do this.
Hmm.
I mean, I myself have been reading up a lot about this, and I've also, in a way, explored a lot of these things, and I'm pretty confused to how everybody has their own philosophy to
Yeah.
design. So
Exactly. I think exactly what you said. Everyone has their own philosophy. I don't think that everyone is allowed to have their own philosophy. The only thing that shouldn't be allowed is to to make your philosophy the philosophy,
yeah,
like the real truth. I learned that architecture is not art in school, and I was very angry about it because I like art. And then with my profession and with real life practice, you understand that, yeah, this is not art, and it's not meant to be art, because I won't even be able to defend my work with my client if this is art. Your client is not going to want to put money on something that is subjective to taste, or it is trending. You know what I mean? Or it's
yeah,
fashionable. In real life, they put me away. But if you look at the things that we do in Maya in the classes, they are not really architecture as well. And
yeah,
if I show these projects to my office, they will never take it on board, ever, ever, ever. I think even my director once said something like, "Why is Mariana making a watermelon kind of stadium or something like?" Because it's not architecture, it's art. It's not art as well, it's this in between, but it's very far away from architecture. So in real life practice it gets discarded, because it's surface, there is a lot of surface that is there only for aesthetics. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah,
still, this is what I think. I don't think this is what you should do. you
yeah.
should do you should
I
do what you think.
I totally understand. I mean, let me like ask one last question and be done with it. I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of participants are waiting. So actually, I was very curious to know that you're in the competition. I mean, computational side of the you head the team, right? Is it just very simple concepts you develop on, or you go on to detailing out everything,
Yeah.
including the planning aspects as well?
Now, for example, I suggest the planning something based on a space. Even if you think about, like, time wise, they spend too much time doing the plan, and as 3D like designers, we are very fast, right? We are faster.
Yeah,
So I would start doing the interiors before I look at them in plan. So I'll most likely model an interior and say, hi guys, can you look at this? This is interesting. If you have the circulation there, it's interesting that the entry is there, and this is exactly the shot that you get when you get in the building. And then the planning say, okay, this makes sense or doesn't make sense at all, or we can take a little bit from that and put on the plan. So time-wise, it happens like designers, planners, and sometimes it's the opposite. The planners say definitely like an airport, you cannot just do whatever you think that you like. An airport has a lot of rules, so the planning it has to be earlier than us on everything they're doing. So it depends on the project, but traditionally designers, planners.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Great to see you, Sid.
Thank you. You too, Mariana.
The following question will be coming from Enes.
Hello, Mariana. Thank you very much for
Hi.
your presentation.
Thank you so much.
I would like to ask you a question. Are you sacrificing any of your function to design an iconic building? Because you mentioned that iconic building and a landmark. Because I had a chance to see the Dancing House in Prague. It's a great building. It's a landmark from outside. When I went into a restaurant, and I saw that there's a different column, and it's the middle of the restaurant, and some of waiters are and clients are need to bend over to get through the restaurant, and I saw that. And in my student projects, I want to design an iconic kind of building, as you know. I want to I want to see that my teachers are expressed, and for this, when I try to design it, it always comes to a cube and very rational building.
Yeah.
I can't design an iconic building. What do you do? Do you start over when you find a problem on function? What do you do on your group? Thank you.
I start over. So I don't think anyone believes it, but when I do something that is just plastic and it's just shape for shape, I get all the directors on top saying no way. Why is this curved? Why is this double curved? And why a lot of things that when we look at Zaha buildings, we thought that everything was possible and free, but it's not really like that. So function is still obviously the key part of any project, of course. So what I think that Zaha and the office does best is exactly that. It can turn something functional but iconic. So function is still there, and it is an iconic building. And then, of course, some other things happen. For example, the column that you're talking about, I don't know which column it is, but some other thing happened even after the competition. Most likely in the competition, there was no column. And until a very late stage, there was no column, until some engineer says we have this little point of fragility here. I'm just guessing. Until an engineer says we have this huge point of fragility here, we really need a column outside of place. And then what Zaha can do the best, or what the office can do best, is okay, let's make this column a feature column, a design column, something that is part of the design. So they do their best to kind of masquerade this need of having that column there. In this case, it didn't work. But you know, everyone tries, and then errors, and then sometimes it leads to success. But it really depends on the project. I think that you have to successfully have your function working. That's 100%. And then you need to see functionality you need or you don't need, but see functionality in curve, see functionality in organic shapes. Because if there's something less natural in the world, is a cube. It's the most artificial geometry that we have, a cube. Any primitive polygon is artificial, right? So a cube is not natural. So why is this the one that is embracing function the better? You know, why isn't it curve? Why do you think that curve is not embracing function better than a cube? Even like if you think about corners, this is a huge waste of space, right? So why isn't this chamfered? And I'm just saying some very, very practical examples. And then there's something else that helps your cube to get a bit into shape, which is your context, what is happening around it. So in this case, we had the desert. It was very complicated to get in like a shape because there's nothing around it, literally. But in the city, there's a lot of things happening around. So how does your cube gets hit by it? So how does it get shaped by it? Obviously, there's something iconic on cubes. I do cubes at the office as well. So there's something iconic on cubes. You just have to understand, what is this brief asking me? What is the context asking me? And is there a way to make this function work better with organic shapes than with cubes? But it doesn't have to be imposed, this organic architecture. It doesn't have to be like the the starting point for landmarks.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And Marco, you can ask your question.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hello.
Okay, so it was very interesting to hear that. I get very excited when I heard the melody. You talked about melody that you've been in touch. I also been in touch with her 1 year ago, but for an internship, but the pandemic came and yeah.
No,
So
we
it
would
was
have worked together.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really exciting to hear her name. And the question is actually, I study a lot of Grasshopper, Rhino, and Freeform and computational design. But at university, I hear a lot that I don't respect maybe the context, that is not so environmentally friendly, or I don't respect the building site. So the question is, how do you defend the parametricism according to how can I explain myself? Like how do you defend it in the eyes of the architects that are against it? I made myself.
I understand.
Clear.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of architects against this.
I know. So here's the thing: I never brought any of this to my conventional school in Portugal.
Yeah.
So I don't know what would have been their reaction. I did my kind of conventional, non-conventional buildings. I suffered, I worked double, but I'm here, I survived. And I made this far. So if you make your conventional buildings and make sure that your creativity is more or less alive and surviving throughout the years, I think that you can even apply this anger and this need that you have to explain and this need that you have to express yourself and apply it later. I think you have a chance for that. You have a possibility to do that. So
it's very satisfying to see you that you've
it
made
is okay. Yeah, it is okay.
Because I studied a year at Bartlett, then at Milano
like me,
School of Polytechnic. Really?
Yeah, I did Polytechnical. Yeah.
Ah, okay. And then I came back to Romania, to Bucharest, which is like the architecture school here is very conventional.
Ah, really? But can I tell you something? One of my favorite designers from the office, they are from Bulgaria.
Like really?
4, yeah. So this means that you have a very strong design drive, most of you, even though your school is conventional.
We do, really do. Okay, yeah. So thank you very much for all.
Yeah. And you have a very good academic path.
I like to think so, but I have to do something with it, and it's pretty confusing what to do with all this knowledge and what to do next. Like,
yeah, you'll make it though. You have been doing good choices, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marco. Irmak, you can ask your question.
Okay, so thank you so much for your presentation. I was really excited about you coming here. So, okay, well, my question is that you have mentioned that you had postgraduate education in AI DRL, and I saw that you studied with exoskeletons and form fitting and 3D prototyping and all, and these are the subjects that I'm quite interested in. But however, this is really interesting subjects. AAGRL is a really competitive environment to be in, and well, it made me so stressed to be. I mean, I would be so excited, but I would also be so stressed with all these extra successful people and students around. And I want to ask, how would it feel? Did you had any difficulties or did trust?
That's the thing. So inside the RL, there's no competition.
Really?
Everyone is in deep shit. everyone is like a general chaos. A general, oh my god, we suck. We're so bad. We're so bad. Because I think probably because our director is so demanding, and all of our directors are so demanding that we are like almost helping each other out and like even praying for their presentation. So it's, you have a feeling of more like it's student against teachers and not students against the students. And also because we have different studios, of course, instead of a studio of your own studio, obviously there's a little bit like what are these doing and this group doing and that group doing, but as soon as you settle your thesis, you're just different. So you're not even comparing anymore, you're just trying to make your thesis go somewhere, some places. And apart from that, we have three different studios with completely different subjects, so we are kind of thrive, waiting for our colleagues to thrive and to actually make some progress. And it's so interesting, the research is also very interesting, so you're kind of, this is the future, please make it like make it look good, make it work. So we are all rooting a lot for ourselves, and then even in the end there's this huge family of the ex-DRLs. And so at the office a lot of us did DRL, and we are most of us are ex-DRLs like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and we feel like this kind of community kind of feeling. So inside, I don't think there's no competition. We are really like, please do it, please God, it's good.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. Thank you. Because like, I'm a freshman in Beijing University, and I'm just having a basic design studio, and I even get stressed about that class, and I think about what would happen if I was in AADRL.
No.
So this was a relief for me. Thank you.
Welcome.
So Gorang has a question, but I think his microphone is, there's a problem, so I can ask the question on behalf of him. So my question is how to avoid repetitions of ideas when exploring different concepts and approaches. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a hard one. That's my job. So I'm hired in this office to give ideas and constant new ideas whenever we face a challenge or we have a new brief. It's obviously there is a danger of repeating stuff, but there's also like this freedom of picking up some ideas that you had in the past that never went anywhere, but they make so much sense now that you're able to kind of, we call it recycle. So you don't lose your ideas. Like, for example, there's a very big unbuilt culture in the office, of course. A lot of projects never went anywhere, but they are really good. And why would they die, right? I have a huge cemetery of old ideas, and so sad. So obviously sometimes I recycle some little details from those ideas and I bring them on. I think we are allowed to do that. Inside of one project, obviously you cannot be repeating your idea over and over. Your director would even ask, like, please get out of your head and do something different, because they need to see different stuff. It's obviously challenging. So sometimes I do like 3 options for one tower, and then we meet and we're like, no, we don't like any, this doesn't make any sense. And then I have to sit in front of my computer, and you cannot wait for inspiration to arrive. There's no such thing as that. And I have to get on new options, and I write them down, and okay, I need to do 3 more, ting, 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 done. And that's my job, is to have 1,000 of new ideas. So far, I haven't run out. There are a lot of different shapes in the world, as you can see. So the possibilities are endless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, we have more than 7, actually more 8 questions. You can tell us when you're tired, then we can
No, I'm
limit
fine.
the questions.
I finished the day anyway.
So the first question will come from Özlem.
Hello, first of all, thank you for this amazing, very informative and inspiring presentation. And I would like to ask a question about Hyperloop project. It inspires me a lot. What materials can be used on the facade of Hyperloop to suit harsh climatic conditions? What are some shading strategies to combat the extremely hot weather?
So in the Hyperloop case, we went for horizontal shading. So they are louvers that open and close depending on your how public and private is the space that we are covering. So on private spaces, of course, and on our facade, you would incline these louvers slightly. It also creates a nice gradient from the outside. So horizontal louvers are usually a good thing when you're doing a project that has this much exposure to the sun. And it also reduces inner energy. So it was a wise decision to keep on the louvers. And then for exterior materials, I would just avoid any highly reflective material like metal or any glossy material. In this case, I think it was GRG, which is a component for concrete. It's not concrete, but it's a sort of it has concrete residue, so it is like a composite of concrete, which you can use on site, or you can have them done outside and then brought in. In this case, because the project was highly symmetric, you could even rationalize the shape and get this done with a robotic arm somewhere else and then bring it on site. So yeah, I think DRG, horizontal louvers, and very simple, and glass.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So Rajdip has a question. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Hello, yeah.
Ma'am, I'm really sorry I couldn't put my camera on. I have a problem with my webcam.
It's okay.
I'm a big fan of your following your work. Even I have attended virtually the workshop of the 2 days. From that day, I'm following your each and every work from Instagram. Ma'am, I'm in India. I'm in my final year. I'm doing my thesis on in my graduation and planning for ADRL for my master's. I'm really scared because the level of students and the great person is around the world. They're gonna apply for that. I'm really scared for my portfolio that what to send in the area because it's a very selective place. I'm really scared that will I get chance or not to pursue that. That's the biggest question of that. And even my second question is that after the building a form in a Maya, as we talking about the design to building a form and how to get the floor plans for the planning possibility, because it's a fluid structure, each and every floor has a different shape and the structural wise to how to get that to distribute to for the planning procedure. So these are the two questions, ma'am. So that's it, ma'am.
Okay, so for the first question, when I joined DRL, I had no knowledge on 3D modeling. Okay, so I applied with my final thesis that I did in Lisbon. It didn't show any software skills. It was actually very obvious that I knew AutoCAD at that time. It just showed interest on design and research. Okay, so I don't think that you shouldn't be nervous about it. As long as you show your interest on design research, I think that you have high chances. So I would not stress at all. Anyway, make sure that you have a plan B. If you don't make it to DRL, you have Bartlett, which is super cool. It's shorter, right? But they do with exactly the same subject. So B Pro, it's a very good alternative for DRL, and also you have like 1,000 of others around the world for design research as well. But anyway, don't lose your hopes on AADRL. Okay, you might get it. Regarding the Maya, you did fluidity too. You did
yes,
my last, so that's on the recording. So the second day, right in the very end, there's a Q&A, and I showcase exactly how you jump from Maya to Rhino. Like I literally do take on my Maya model, I converted smooth mesh preview to polygons, I export this as an OBJ to Rhino, and then in Rhino I project horizontal lines, and then on top view I have the plans. So make sure that you go to the recording number 2, and then right in the end Q&A session I show that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep, welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
you for your question, and Murat can ask his question.
Hi, Mariana.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, you?
Thank you for your good presentation, and I'm very pleased to meet you. I would like to ask a question about BIM, and I think it's a very different question about building information modeling. What do you think about BIM, or do you use any BIM-based software in your design, especially as an architect of Saadit Architects? Do you use BIM-based software during the construction process of your project?
So let's say that outside of the competition scope, I mean, inside of the competition scope, you don't use BIM, obviously. Outside of the competition scope, you do introduce BIM.
Especially construction process.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not right in the beginning. So you still have to get the plans, and you still have to get some grasshopper coming into it as well. Panelization, especially from grasshopper, glass, especially from grasshopper, and then you start feeding this to BIM. And then there is a huge feedback loop between BIM and Rhino and grasshopper and Rhino inside of BIM. Okay, but let's say in the office that I work for, BIM are not is like a specialized team, so not everyone does BIM, and who does BIM does only BIM. They don't need to be architects. They can even just be technicians who took the BIM courses, and they are really good at it. So that's the only thing they do. They get our geometry, they get into BIM, and then they report back saying what's not working, so we have to fix it. Because BIM has a very specific language, and I think that it's great. I think that it's great that some people are really specialized in BIM. I think it's so unfair that in some small offices you need to know how to do everything, like from design to planning to BIM. It's very demanding when you're in a small office. That's why when you can afford to be in a big office, or when you can afford to have a big office yourself, you can hire people who do only BIM. And I think that's a very good recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mariana.
Oh, welcome.
Okay. So the next question is from Pedro. He can ask by unmuting himself.
Hi, Pedro.
Hello, Mariana. Can you hear me?
Seeing.
Um, I entered in contact with you 2 days ago, I think. But I wanted to know about your like contemporary vision, and being in Portugal as well with I think conservative professors and people like that. And how do you think about contemporary architecture being called like just being plastic and those kinds of things? Because in my opinion, and I'm trying to figure out in my head what it is, but in my mind, I think that we need a little bit of knowledge with materials and with that with materials, and I see these kinds of contemporary architectures using a lot of like called fake plastics.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know your opinion about this.
I think that there's not like a specific and final answer to that. I think that more than calling it plastic, we should allow it to run freely. The plastic architecture and the non-plastic and highly structuralized architecture. Like I'm doing this distinction because I'm thinking that when you say plastic architecture, we are thinking about a lot of coverage of materials, so a lot of use of materials, a lot of cladding. We call it cladding. So this for me is plastic, a lot of surface that is not needed and is only there to create something artistic. And on the other side, you have the highly structural architecture that have zero cladding. It's just structure and walls and the minimum kind of materials that you have. I think that they are both valid. I still think that maybe if we find a balance between the plastic materials and the highly structured, let's say some of the Calatrava stuff, highly structured, I think there's like this limbo in between that we are allowed to do. I don't think that we have to get rid of everything that is plastic and everything that is cladding. I don't think we need to get rid of them. I think they're nice. They add something to the space. They add something to your experience of the space. So keep a bit of plastic and bring a little bit of rationality, and I think we are in a very sweet spot. So that's what I think, a balanced one.
And can I ask another question? I
Yeah.
don't know. How do you can manage with conservative professors when you were on your thesis and you were studying, because here we have a little issue with this, and I feel the same thing that you talk on your interviews about going out and discover the world, that
Yeah.
maybe we have something better out there.
Yeah.
So what was in your mind? I just want to know a little bit.
Are you in Brazil or Portugal?
Yeah, I'm in Brazil
I
now.
am in Brazil. So you even have more like a more open mind than in Portugal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because you have Oscar Niemeyer doing a very good favor for you. Like giving a bit of curves. So for Portugal, the big highlight of Portuguese architecture is Alvarez Vieira. So it's 90 degrees, beautiful, perfect white boxes, which is okay. It's allowed. It doesn't mean that you relate to them, and that doesn't mean that you are a worse architect. And regarding speaking with teachers, to be honest, I think that during all the time that I was in my school, I was just okay about being different and okay about challenging teachers without, getting on an attitude and challenging them. It's not that. It was like, this is what I understand from the brief, this is what I understand that architecture should be, and then I would most likely get a no, or I don't understand what you're saying, and it's okay. Just like I said in the beginning, I survived. I think you'll survive as well. Even sometimes when people are nagging you and they are going against what you think so many times, you create this anger that it kind of actually motivates you to do something about it. So it's actually good that they are like scratching you this much, because after you'll say like, okay, you know what? I'm better than this, and let me show you. And then you go. So if everyone was so happy with everything you were doing, you were most likely working less. So in a way, it's a good thing. We are just looking at the positive from that. It's a good thing. You just need to understand that you're not worse and you're different, and that doesn't mean that you're worse. It most likely means that you're better. So just keep your creativity alive throughout your school. We all went through that. All.
All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Kutay, I think it's your turn. You can ask your question.
You are muted right now, Kutay.
Sorry. Thank you for your inspiring presentation. Hello.
Welcome. Hi.
In one of the questions, you talked about the difference between art and architecture. And I wonder that in Zaha Hadid, they mostly do like organic forms. So that, what do you think about the future of architecture is going? Like more like art and free forms, or is it something else?
I think it's important that everyone has an idea of the backstage of these very big organic forms. So we do cubes. I do a lot of cubes, and sometimes they call them pixels, but they are cubes, But the fancy word is, oh, let's do the pixel option. And the pixel option is the cube option. What usually happens is your client is really not excited about the cubes, or your client didn't ask for the office to do the cubes. So that's why you see the organic shapes. But behind that, there are a lot of buildings that have 90 degrees. There are a lot of buildings that are standing straight on the ground. You just don't see them because they are not marketeered. They are not exposed. But of course they happen. And I don't think that most important thing, I'm not a very big fan on having a specific vision for anything. I think that even especially nowadays, it's really important to listen to the present and to go along with the present with a strategy, but without this big vision for something to happen. I think that actually constrains you. I think the theory, sometimes it does constrain your ideas more than it helps you being free and creative. That's something that is really important. But not just that, most of us, when we say the future of architecture, we are thinking about a style. For some reason, we need like this aesthetic idea in our heads when we say future of architecture. And I think that's something that is really important, is to kind of abolish this idea of a style and of the future of architecture being dependent on the style and on some aesthetic that survives throughout decades. So everyone says that Zaha has a style, and I don't think Zaha would be very happy to know that she has a style, you know, because that's not very smart. The smartest thing is to have a strategy for a specific brief, a specific client, a specific place, a specific budget, a specific, you know, that's the fair game about this, is not imposing your style and what aesthetically you think that things should look to be cohesive. I think you should adapt to whatever they are giving you. Usually I say that when you are in school, I would even force myself to do completely different shapes. Some are really pure geometries, circles and cubes. Some are just organic and fluid. I think you should make sure that you know how to work with all the geometry before understanding that there's a style that connects them. But this is just my idea. I think we should abolish the idea of a style.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, the time is up, but Mariana, if you want, we can get one last or two questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Zoha, you can ask your question.
Hi, Mariana, and hi everyone.
Hi.
I have a question. I have a question more about the software. Maya, is it how the level of the details we can go with it? It's like we can go we can design like the general form, the shape of the building, the exterior shape, or it's more like the structure of the glass and the frame and that.
Yeah, it's a good question. Everyone asks that. So I think Maya has a limit on the detail that it allows, of course. But I think the limit would be like your window frame. Okay, we go as far as the window frame, and then whenever you need to do like real specific details, like your door handle, you don't do it in Maya unless your client wants a fancy door handle. So usually we go as far as a window frame. So the general massing, and then glass, and then a landscape, and then the difference between interior surfaces and exterior surfaces, and then small details for facade. I also do some parametric details on the facade. I did it on my previous classes. You see it on my Instagram. So small parametric details. And then as soon as you get into these like millimeter kind of thing, like 10 centimeters, under 10 centimeters, I think I would take it to Rhino or to Grasshopper.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. How long it took to learn Maya? Is it enough 1 month or like that, or it's?
I think it depends on who is teaching you Maya. So when I learned Maya, my tutor was not good, and he was teaching like tool by tool, which is, I don't understand why people teach like that. Like, so this is the tool that does, this is the tool, and then that takes ages. Right, so that's why I decided I'm going to teach this in the way that I think it should be taught. So I give, this is the building that we're going to do, and these are the tools that we're going to use, and then repeat the tools. So it depends. I think that I'm just going to speculate here. If you take my classes, I would say that 3 classes are enough. I have students that have done like 3 of my classes, which is 8 hours each class. And I think right now, some of them, I can tell them like, you don't need to take another class. You're good to go. Don't sign in anymore. Don't register. You're good. So that's what I usually see. It depends, but that's what I see usually.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. You're welcome.
And I think the last question, Johan, you can ask your question.
Okay.
Juan.
Hi, Mariana.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good. So my question is, as you know that I'm having the privilege to have been hired, you know where, and as it's a world renowned firm, what advice could you give me or anyone who's entering this first league world in architecture for the very first time? Thank you.
You're welcome. So you're joining a corporate office. That's the first thing you need to think. It's not Zaha, but it's a corporate office, and it's a lot of people. So I think the most important attitude when you're joining an office and a big office is to be humble, but not as in I don't have my own ideas. You should keep your own ideas here and have opinions, but to be humble, because you'll this is a very overwhelming feeling, but you'll be the one that knows less in the room when you join, right? What is important to know is everyone knows that, and everyone is tolerant towards that. So everyone who joins Zaha are so scared in the beginning, and I always tell them, like, you have the easiest job here. Everyone thinks you're the new person, and they're like, oh, she's new, he's new. You know, it's fine, it's okay, he's just joined. So you have a lot of excuses, which is good, and think about something. They're also very curious to see what you're bringing on the table, because they're probably most likely tired of their own stuff. They have been doing the same stuff, or they have been working for the office for very long. So whenever someone new joins, it's like new things, new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of seeing things, and they always want to see your, at least that's my opinion, your side, your point of view. So make sure that you're humble, but you give your own point of view and your opinion. I think that you're very opinionated, which is good.
Absolutely.
Which is good. So you should not be shy about it, not be introvert, and think that whatever you're gonna say, if it's wrong, they are just gonna think you're new. It's okay, you're new, yeah. And
thank you so much. Thank you.
And the last question coming from Masa. You can ask your question.
Hi.
Hi, Masa.
Thank you for your great presentation. I have one question. What do you recommend for us to do as a student when we clash with our instructors in regards like to your design, like our design? There's like this limited difference of style since we're like studying in abroad, but like they're just limiting us with our design.
I know.
Yani,
Over
only-
design was what I heard the most. Over design, exactly that word.
Yeah, like I don't know why, and they're just like reducing our grades if we just didn't be in our lifestyle, like the way they think.
Yeah.
So
there are many subjects in this. The first subject is the grades are not that important. The grades are not important. Your portfolio is really important. In our profession, whatever grade you have, my grades, it never made any sense to me, or it never took me anywhere. So your portfolio is important. So that means one important thing, you should be yourself in your portfolio, because after you leave your university, you're on your own, and you're going to apply to an office with your own identity. So your portfolio should show your own identity. So in a way, you cannot be too stubborn towards your teachers, because you would stop learning if you think that you know better than them. Of course, don't be too stubborn, but make sure that your DNA stays in your projects, because you're joining on your own an office, and your teachers will mean nothing in the future. You won't even remember. Another important thing that I think that we also talk is we are a very different generation from our teachers. Our teachers belong to a generation that doesn't see diversity in the same way that we see diversity. It doesn't see flexibility in the same way that we see flexibility. And I think that in my year, not everyone was clashing, but some people were clashing. I was clashing because they were a bit not younger in mind, but more diverse, more flexible. I always kept this feeling that everything is allowed. Everything is allowed. Everything should be allowed. There are no rules. If you're not hurting anything, there are no rules. And obviously, your teachers are not from that school at all. They are from the school of rules. So there is a very big generation clash. As soon as I think that as millennials teach Generation Z, I think we are good. But and that's why we have a lot of teachers my age teaching young students, because I think that we kind of speak the same language. And now with the older architect teachers, I think it's harder. because they have a very closed mind. Anyway, they have a lot of things to teach you. I learned a lot from my students. I learned a lot about modernism, like all of us do, Le Corbusier for life. And I learned a lot from it, and I learned a lot of lessons, and I still kept my identity and my DNA, and I'm here now. So I think, just like I told before, it's normal. Everyone is going through the same thing, and your grades are not that important. Sometimes they are a big hit when they really bad. It hits you. It makes you demotivated. It makes you think that you're not a good architect. There was one time that I actually, in my head, I think I'm gonna quit this, and I was on my fifth year, and it was just because of a grade. And right now I don't even remember my grades and my office has no clue about my grades. So don't worry about your grade, keep your DNA alive and listen the lessons that they have to teach you. But that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Most welcome.
So I believe there are no further questions, so we can slowly close the session. Mariana, thank you so very much for this wonderful evening and joining us from Lisbon. It was an honor to host you, and we hope in the near future we also will meet you in person as well. And we also want to take some screenshots and combine them. So can everyone please open their webcams and smile for a couple of seconds?
Cringe.
Cringe. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Okay, and also thank you everyone who has joined us tonight. It was very inspiring and joyful and more than an hour and a half. And I believe as design and architecture students, we have gained lots of new information that will enhance our perspective about Maya, DRL, design processes, and behind the scenes of competitions and offices, definitely. And is there anything else, Ece, Ignay, and Asena, you would like to add?
I would like to say thank you very much for being really open to us and inspiring us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation. It's really a pleasure. It's really important that we help everyone. I really think so. And to make this more transparent.
Great. So if also, Mariana, you have anything to add, you can say, and then we can slowly close the session.
I think we're good. Let's go and have dinner.
Okay. Thank you very much, and see you at our following events.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mariana.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.